Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the only boss with an Old style hard mode in all of Mista Pandaria, Protectors of the Endless.
The terrace was not meant for your kind.
First, can we just take a sec and appreciate how awesome those Old hard modes were? Gosh, take me back. I miss it. Okay, so Blizzard seemed to miss it too, and with this fight brought them back. The difficulty is based on which of the three protectors you kill last, with Kaolan, the melee one, being the elite mode. The rewards for completing said hard mode are the same loot items, except they're scaled up by 7 eye levels, from its original loot table, making this, yes, this first boss of Terrace of the Endless Spring, the highest eye level loot in all of Phase 1. There are 2 other ways to do this fight, the easiest being killing Asani last and the medium killing Regail last, but the only actual change to loot is by killing Kaolan last, so unless you're doing the achievement, I really recommend killing Asani last if you're doing the easy mode, as Regail last is kind of annoying. As such, we're going to mainly focus on the hard mode here, but I'll briefly go through the other versions of the fight so you can see parts of them. As far as raid comp, this is your standard 2 tank, 5 or 6 healer fight. DPS is super important here, but healers are going to be very stressed by the end of this fight, so an extra one may help smooth out the edges during prog. Alright, so let's meet the protectors. Kaolan, Asani, and Regail. Each of these have their own abilities, but when one dies, it buffs the others with a stack of Shaw Corruption, healing them to full and increasing their damage done by 25%, as well as giving them an extra fight complicating ability. Now, one thing to recognize, Kaolan has double the HP that the other 2 have, and while it won't take you twice as long to get him down because of a damage buff that we'll talk about in a second, he's still by far the beefiest of the bunch, and putting him last is a real challenge. Alright, so before we get into each of the bosses, let's talk about the fight-wide heroic mechanic, Minions of Fear. These guys spawn at the top of the stairs leading to the rest of the raid and crawl their little spooky butts directly to the lowest HP protector. If they reach them, they explode and imbue the protector with a stack of greater corrupted essence. These increase the damage that protector does by 10%, and if it reaches 5 stacks, explodes and deals 700,000 damage and fears everybody in the raid, pretty much ensuring a wipe. However, if you kill this thing before it reaches the bosses, it will harmlessly pop and give the 5 closest players to its body a stack of corrupted essence. Now this lasts 2 minutes, and it increases those players' damage by 10% and can stack up to 10 times. However, at 10 stacks, that player will also explode, dealing significant damage to the raid. As such, the goal here is to organize a rotation of players to handle these things, slowing them and killing them quickly while standing near their body, closer than any other players in your raid, and ensuring that stack applies just to them when it's their turn. There will be a lot of ways to do this depending on your raid composition, but I'd recommend making 5 groups. The first 3 are primarily your DPS, who will be soaking this, and making sure that everybody builds up their stacks over time and not allowing those stacks to drop, as you want to have everybody in the raid juiced as hell for that last boss to take him out as fast as you can. Now my guild landed on this rotation. You'll see lots of other versions of this order, but this worked for us. For the first rotation, groups 1, 2, and 3 take 3 stacks each. Then that order repeats, meaning groups 1, 2, and 3 now have 6 stacks. After that, those same groups take 2 more each, which put them at 8, but here we put group 4 in the mix at the end of it, having them then soak 5. Then, just to make sure everybody's refreshed, we run groups 1, 2, and 3 again for a single stack, making sure theirs don't fall, and then group 4 goes again, pushing up their stacks to 9 total. From here, groups 1 through 4 all have 9 stacks, meaning the last group that ideally hasn't taken any stacks up to this point must take 9 stacks back to back without anybody else taking any. If a player is dead or someone missed their stacks, you'll have to adjust to make sure no one reaches 10 stacks or else you'll likely wipe, so watch your stacks and be very cognizant of where you're at with them. Like I've mentioned before, Foji has an incredible weak aura for this that allows you to see at a glance what everybody's groups are and how many stacks that they're currently sitting on, as well as the time left in their current stacks. You can even import the names of the groups preset using a string, which conveniently I've included in my raid assignment sheet now out on my Patreon for super simple implementation of this feature ahead of time. Okay, a couple small things about this before we move on. Remember, they are slowable, so hunters, we ask you to drop a frost trap in their path toward the raid, or even 2 in a line so that the slow extends a good distance. But you don't really want to move away from the bosses too far as a raid, because you want to keep hitting them as long as you can until the minions are in range. And you only have to be closer than the 6th closest person to get your stack, even by a fraction of an inch. So movement can be pretty min-maxed here to ensure that you've got full boss uptime while soaking. If it's your turn, move out a tiny bit with your group, blast them as they arrive, and then return to the bosses. Again, this is the order we went with. The healers that get extra healing from damage like Disc Priests and Mistweaver Monks could be put in the earlier groups to juice their healing numbers, but it's not required whatsoever. Just do 3 groups of DPS, then 1 of healers and a couple more DPS, and finally the last group of healers and your tanks. Alright, that's the minions. Now we'll discuss the protectors themselves. Each of them have class-like abilities. Regail and Asani are casters, and Kaolan a Giga Chad Arms Warrior. So you want your beefiest tank on Kaolan, while your other takes both Regail and Asani to begin with. The first protector we're going to talk about, and the one if you're doing the hard mode you should kill first, is Regail. Now Regail wields the power of lightning and has 2 abilities to start with, and an extra if any of the others are dead first, which on hard mode you'll never see. First, he casts a simple lightning bolt. It's a 2-second cast that you'll need to interrupt. It's not bad, just assign a couple people to keep an eye on it so your tank doesn't get chunked with this. Second, he'll cast Lightning Prison on 3 players at once. Now, this is kind of similar to Shekzir's Fear in Phase 3 of Heart of Fear. You'll get a debuff that will initially not be cleansable. You need to run out of the raid because after 2.5 seconds you'll be stunned and pulse 114,000 damage to everybody within a short distance. Now this isn't terrible, just assign healers to dispel these. Weak auras do help, but if you get this run out, let the stun hit you, get dispelled, and run back in. Easy peasy. Now on hard mode, you won't ever see Regail's 3rd ability or that 4th ability if you leave Regail up last, which you'll likely never do unless you're going for an achievement, but in case you want to see it, it's called Lightning Storm. Regail puts out concentric circles of lightning on the ground around him. You need to dodge these. They're pretty quick and are reminiscent of Ragnaros' World in Flames from Firelands. People will die to this. I know when I did it on beta, I definitely did, but it's actually not hard. Just get to the edge of each circle and move out of the slice of incoming damage, but not too far. Live on that edge. Okay, so moving on to the second kill target in our hard mode order, Elder Asani. Now this guy practices shamanic water healing spells and has 2 abilities, with the 3rd now being active as well, since you likely killed Regail first. First up, he's got a simple water bolt. This also needs to be interrupted as it deals splash damage and is completely avoidable with a good kick rotation. Second, he'll place a puddle of healing water under himself or one of his friends, so if you see it, you should move the bosses out of it as quickly as you can. Now, this also puts a buff that you should purge on the bosses that were standing in them, increasing their healing received by 50% and healing them for 5% of their total HP every 3 seconds. Remember, it doesn't actually matter if anything but your kill target gets this buff, so don't stress on purging Asani while Regail is up. Just make sure Regail gets purged in Phase 1, and then of course Asani in Phase 2. One thing here that I hadn't realized, but is actually incredibly important for this fight, is that players can also stand in the puddle and get this buff. This makes healing them much easier for the first 2 phases. Once the puddle goes down, move the bosses out of it, purge the kill target, and then players all move to stand in the puddle and soak up the sweet, sweet water. Alright, other than that, once Regail goes down, Asani is imbued with a new ability, Corrupted Waters. He still bolts and puts cleansing waters down, but now he'll also summon a sphere of water in the center of the room with just over 11 million HP that, while it's alive, will buff both himself and the other one with 75% increased melee and casting speed. This must be killed super quickly, as the Kaolan tank is already taking a good amount of damage, and this just boosts that massively, so blast it fast. However, like the cleansing waters, once it dies, it leaves a puddle on the ground that buffs everybody standing in it with Purified, increasing the melee, ranged, and spell haste of everybody within 15 yards for 20 seconds. Super nice. Thank you, Asani. So, we use this thing to blast Asani down, moving him every so often out of the cleansing water puddles, killing the corrupted water spheres, and working to stand in those puddles to help the healers, because what is going on with Kaolan is already starting to stress them the fuck out. Okay, Asani goes down, thus ending phase 2. Now, what I haven't been telling you, and what the healers on this fight have been frantically realizing as they watch my raid frames, is that Kaolan fucks hard. Let's get into exactly why. So to begin, and most pressingly, every 12 seconds or so, Kaolan puts a permanent dot on one new player in your raid. This ticks for 120,000 shadow damage every 3 seconds, and once a player has it on them, that's it. They are then stuck with it. They'll just tick and tick for the rest of the fight. At the start of things, this isn't that big a deal, but as more and more of the raid gets hit with this dot, your healers will be frantically trying to keep the raid up, while also moving around, soaking those minions of fear, and dealing with Kaolan's massive tank damage. Now, that's his only phase 1 ability, fortunately, but once Regail has died, he gets a new ability, Defiled Ground. Every 15 to 20 seconds, Kaolan will drop these little shadowy circles on the ground under his current target, and while it's up, they initially take 180,000 shadow damage a second, but every second that they stand in it, they'll also get a stack that increases the damage that they take from that thing by 10%. This means over time, your tank will be really hit hard by these things if they're not quick. Now, it's not hard to move out whatsoever, but even a few ticks when you're not paying attention, in conjunction with his melee damage and likely an application of the dot that he's thrown on you, will mean that your tank is really taking a beating. Now, this Defiled Ground debuff lasts for a minute, so sometime halfway through phase 2, your tanks should swap so that the first one can have their debuff fall off in preparation for phase 3. Just watch the timer on the Defiled Ground, taunt swap so that there's no danger of it being dropped anywhere near the raid, and continue. Okay, so now that we've finished off the water-wielding Asani and turn our attention to Kaolan, who now has 2 stacks of Shock Corruption as well, increasing the damage of those dots by 50%, which now likely have been applied to nearly everybody in the raid and makes his melees very, very scary. Now, all 3 of the bosses get a Sha ability if they're the final one alive. The other 2 get a ranged one, but really, this thing isn't that dangerous. People kind of overhyped it, in my opinion. We found it to be pretty easy. It's the other things that you're dealing with that makes this phase tough. But yeah, Kaolan gets the ability Expel Corruption. Every 40 seconds or so, he drops a ball of Sha energy around him that pulses massive damage to anybody close to it, which falls off the further you are away, telegraphed by the cloudy circle here at the edge. Now, you've got to move out of this, ideally ahead of time, as you'll get a stacking debuff that increases your damage to the next ones as well, so it's critical to avoid these things as best you can. Now, this last bit is a frantic race to finish off Kaolan as your raid collects its final stacks of minions of fear. Healers try to keep the raid up and your tank alive as he crushes them hard with his melee attacks. But if you manage to not stack to 10, healers kept their heads above water, and tank's positioning was sound, the protector should go down and you're rewarded with the best loot of the phase. Congratulations. Okay, super quick tank tips. In phase 3 especially, defensives are necessary to help the healers. They've got their hands full, so roll all of your stuff and ask for externals to keep yourself alive. And when the phase 2 to 3 transition happens, we move Kaolan all the way to the wall here so that when he drops that overwhelming corruption, you have it neatly away from the center of the room. For the healers, I'm not kidding when I say this, I lined up raid cooldowns for the entire raid to be popped every 10 seconds for 9 minutes straight to get this boss down the first time. And it worked like a charm. Name of the game here is mana management and having enough juice to finish the fight out toward the end, because we were always running out of mana and that's not going to secure the kill. And for the DPS, just don't read anything here. You're already taking a ton of damage from that dot, and any extra instance will likely get you killed, so respect your healers and avoid the things. Also, stand in those cleansing water puddles so you get healed a good amount. Your healers will thank you. And finally, and this goes for everybody, be very aware of where your stacks are, and if for whatever reason you've reached 9, you need to move as far away from the incoming minions of fear as is safe. A simple healing rain F-low on the ground should be about the distance that you want to move from one end to the other, because everybody should be helping kill the minions at the end here to avoid the stacks going to players who can't afford to take them. Alright, well that's it for protectors. Next up, the day-night healer dragon fight, Sulong, and oh man, have I cooked a good one for you guys. If you haven't, be sure to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.